I'm Virginia Ryan, and today we are featuring Jackie from Franklin Templeton to show us the voice of the American worker. So a few things up front, just some webinar etiquette. We are using the chat feature or the Q&A feature, so either works. As we begin, I will go on mute and let Jackie start. Go ahead and go to the next screen. Just a few reminders too. There's our team. A few reminders about our webinar series. We actually do these once a month. We keep them to 30 minutes or less, a variety of topics, definitely not just on 401k. Sometimes we bring people in, sometimes we host them ourselves, but everything's recorded. Everything's posted on our website, our YouTube channel. So please feel free to check those topics out, and then I'll let you know about some upcoming webinars toward the end. So right before we begin, again, Jackie Reardon from Franklin Templeton is going to be presenting today. She's open to interruptions, so please feel free again to use that chat feature or Q&A. She is the head of marketing for Franklin Templeton, working across the major distribution channels. She joined Franklin Templeton actually through the Legg Mason acquisition, so lots of experience, and all her roles have been focused primarily on retirement. So with that, I will leave it to Jackie and I will go quiet. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be with all of you today. Really appreciate the time. My name is Jackie Reardon and I lead our client marketing efforts at Franklin Templeton. And I've been very, very privileged to be involved with this research study that Franklin Templeton has conducted in partnership with the Harris Poll for the last 3 years. So this is the 3rd year that we've conducted this research. We've seen some great trends, which I'll point out as we kind of cover off some of the results today, but we always want to make sure that every year we're really anchoring around the current environment and really so that we have some context for how participants are feeling today, which is what you'll see in the subtitle for this year's research, in that sort of light blue subtitle, Financial Anxiety, Reshaping Expectations for Benefits. So as you can imagine, that subtitle is highlighting a lot of challenges that employees and participants are facing today, but hopefully also some key opportunities for all of us to sort of anchor around them with resources and tools. So just a quick background on why we decided to start conducting this research 3 years ago. The idea for this research study actually came out of an advisory group that Franklin Templeton pulled together in early 2020. It's a group of about 25 industry experts, includes some retirement plan professionals, ERISA experts, record-keeping partners, et cetera. Really with the express goal of thinking about the retirement industry, what's ahead, and how can we best align tools, resources, and solutions to help really provide for as many U.S. employees as possible, improved well-being, improved financial well-being. And a lot of the topics we're going to talk about today, they're things that all of you are sort of living and breathing every single day. So it's not new ideas, but we really felt it was super important for us to create a fact set. As I mentioned, a fact set that we can kind of confirm and see trends year over year, but then hopefully also have timely insights into actual confirmed data so that we can provide it back to all of you to kind of help you with your own decision making as it relates to evolving benefit solutions for employees. Just a quick overview of some of the topics that we'll cover today. So we're going to take a look at the methodology used to conduct this research. We'll take just a couple moments and slides to provide some context into the environment that everyone is living in today, really what employees and participants are waking up to each day, so that when we dive into the results, we have a bit of that context behind us. Our results are broken out into 3 parts. So part 1 is really all about how participants are telling us that they feel today. Part 2 is all about what they're telling us they're actually doing because of those feelings. And then part 3, probably most importantly, these are some ideas for employers to consider as it relates to tools and resources that can sort of have a thread back to some of those stresses participants are feeling today. And then also some of the behaviors that they're taking today, some good, some bad. What are the tools and resources that we can sort of align to incentivize some of those good behaviors? So some background on the methodology. As I mentioned, we partner with the Harris Poll to conduct this research. This year's research was conducted at the very end of this past calendar year, which is very identical timing to when we've conducted each of the previous research studies as well. These results include responses from 1,000 US adults, all of whom are employed and all of whom have some version of a retirement plan savings. As you can see, it's broken down across the US. So this is really meant to be a sampling of the US employee. And you also see that the generational breakdown below is included. And I will say that this generational age breakdown is very reminiscent of what the current US workforce age breakdown is as well. As we go through some of the results, I'll make note of where we see an emphasis perhaps in a certain result in an underlying demographic group. And this year, there's a lot of great call outs there for us to consider. So just, a brief kind of high level preview of what we're going to cover today. First and foremost, we're seeing that financial stress and concerns are definitely accelerating within US employees. We see that plans for financial independence, which we'll talk about quite a bit, are in jeopardy. And also plans for later years, plans for retirement are in jeopardy. Financial stress is up. In fact, it's up 7% year over year. And a lot of that is to do with a decreased sense of control that people feel over their finances. But we're seeing that financial concerns are definitely increasing in some key areas. For example, financial independence, the ability to reach that continues to grow in importance to respondents. And then also debt. We talked a lot about debt in last year's research, and it's not something that's going away. In fact, 7% year over year, we see that the concern over paying off debt is top of mind for many folks. We also see that many people are delaying retirement, which we'll talk about a bit in section 2. And a lot of that has to do with today's living expenses, inflation, and sort of the pressures that people are under today. And then a lot of people are really thinking about those later years and they're changing their plans. For example, they're thinking, actually, it's probably a good idea for me to continue working due to today's environment. But the good news is that many are looking for a plan, which I think is a fantastic thing and a really great breadcrumb for us to think about around resources. This feeling of wanting a more concrete plan has actually increased quite a bit since we started this research. And then we're seeing the Great Resignation, which is something we've all seen and talked about quite a bit in the past year, is definitely over. And we're taking a look into some of the things that people are doing or the sentiment they have around the workforce as well as a completely new trend. I don't know what we're going to call it going forward collectively, the great boomerang, the great return, but we're definitely seeing a shift in feelings around workforce behaviors. So as I mentioned, I just want to take a couple slides and a couple moments just to kind of set the context again for today's environment across the board, which I think will be important for us, an important lens for us to look at the results once we get into those. So first and foremost, some evergreen trends that we've seen in our research. I mentioned that we've done this for 3 years. And there's also, they're included in that, there's a chunk of questions that we ask every single year, regardless of the environment, because we really want to make sure that some of the trends we're seeing are tracking. These are the things that bubble up for us every single year. First and foremost, we see that workers are really, really interested in improving well-being, but there's roadblocks and they need support. We're also seeing that specifically improving their financial health, their financial well-being is a top concern. And there's key opportunities for employers to provide support in helping employees really improve their well-being. We also see that employees are very, very focused on financial independence. This has been a really, really interesting topic that's come up in our research. And for us, we're seeing that many people are saying financial independence is actually my goal for the future, not traditional retirement. So gone are the days where people are thinking about sort of what their parents did when they retired or their grandparents. meaning everyone just works to sort of one age, they stop working, and then they go off and do kind of your more traditional retirement hobbies. That's actually not the goal anymore across the board. Many more people are thinking about financial independence. And as we all know, that's a very individualized path for people. So how do we kind of think about providing support and letting more people reach that individualized path towards financial independence? And then last but not least, we continue to see that there's a lot of urgency around actually evaluating the total benefit offering that you do have available for employees. Where can you add to, enhance? Maybe there's some great things that you already have available, but just need to get it back in front of employees. So these are some of the evergreen trends we're seeing in our research. But as everyone's living every single day, we're also seeing some shorter term pressures. So things like inflation, which is at a 4-decade high. We continue to see a lot of volatility, but specifically last year, 2022 was the 6th most volatile year that we've seen since the Great Depression. We saw significant drawdowns last year as well. The S&P 500 was down 25%. We have another program called Anatomy of a Recession, where we take a look at several indicators to sort of track whether or not we're headed towards a recession, and sort of like a green, yellow, red light methodology. And it's been blinking red for quite a while. So employees are waking up every day, they're showing up every day with all of these on their mind. They're feeling the market volatility, they're concerned about drawdowns, they're feeling sort of the crunch in their wallet, and they're really concerned about recession. They're seeing that in the media, they're reading articles. So this is the context by which they're sort of living their everyday life. And then, as I mentioned, we're also seeing some shifts within the workforce. So the Great Resignation is no more. We see that 66% of respondents actually said, this current economic environment is actually inspiring me to stay with my employer. There are 34% that say this environment encourages me to leave my employer, but most people are staying put. And in fact, it's not just that they're staying put, but many are actually going back. So we see that 47% of respondents said that they know somebody at their company that got their old job back in the last 5 years, after leaving in the last 5 years. And 37% are actually saying they themselves have considered going back to a job that they've had in the last 5 years. Those two stats, in this trend that we're still to be named, the Great Boomerang or Great Return, those are emphasized for the youngest generations as well. So both millennials and Gen Z, even more of them are either seeing colleagues go back to an old job, or they themselves are considering going back to an old job. So we see some, shorter term market pressures. We're seeing some workforce shifts. And then we're also seeing that long term, year over year, we're seeing that more people are definitely thinking about their later years in a more individualized way. We've asked a lot of these questions year over year, as you can see, and the importance around sort of reaching individual goals is increasing. So asking questions like, having enough money to live comfortably to the end of life, how important is that to you? How important is it to you to be able to stop working when you want to? Feeling satisfied with my well-being, my financial well-being, how important is that to you? And you can see that that's increased year over year. But again, as we mentioned earlier, you can appreciate the fact that my idea of feeling satisfied with my financial well-being is going to be different than anybody else's. So it's a very individualized approach to what the later years might look like. All in all, though, regardless of sort of the long-term trends we're seeing in our research, some of these shorter-term pressures, the increase around kind of, individualized approach, workforce shifts, we are seeing absolutely that the North Star for the US employee is financial independence. So 81% are saying, I feel that I am more focused on becoming financial independent. That is my number one goal. And we wanted to be very specific about what financial independence is, because we hear that term a lot and it's come up a lot in our research. So we worked with the Harris Poll to define it as having enough income or wealth sufficient to pay one's living expenses without having to be employed or dependent on others. So again, that's going to be different for everyone. that continues to grow in importance regardless of long-term trends or shorter-term pressures. So really the question for us is how do we think about creating solutions, providing tools, resources, et cetera, to employees so more folks can really reach that goal of financial independence. So with that backdrop and sort of context, let's really dive deep into the research. So part one, again, as we mentioned, is how participants are feeling. So the current economic climate is accelerating financial stress and it's shifting back milestones like retirement. So how are participants feeling today? And they're feeling stressed out. So 66% say, I am feeling the negative effects of the current economic environment. And that's showing up in some very specific ways. So you'll see in the bars across the slide that they're feeling anxious about the future, that they're having trouble sleeping, that it's impacting personal relationships. And, very importantly, you'll see all the way to the right of the slide, they're also admitting to feeling distracted at work. So 22% admitted to feeling distracted at work. You'll see perhaps in the light gray right above that's increased even more for the youngest generation. And I would argue that these are just the people who are admitting to feeling distracted at work. There's probably many others that are feeling distracted but don't want to admit it. So this is an important call out because this is where we start to paint this picture and really confirm, I think, a long-held anecdote, which is that if you are stressed in one area of your life, it's going to spill into other areas. So for example, when people are stressed out about their financial life, that's going to have impacts elsewhere. And this is also, I think, something that confirms back to employers, like, yes, if an employee is stressed about their financial life, maybe in the past, that's something that you would have thought, that's none of my business. I'm going to let them be. I'm not going to meddle or get involved. Well, actually, it's a good thing to actually consider how to support that because we see that it's spilling over into their work life. And this slide, we're further confirming that anecdote. This is probably one of my favorite slides in this entire presentation. We've asked year over year across 3 key areas of well-being. So for us in our research, well-being is a 3-legged stool. Leg 1 is mental health, leg 2 is physical health, and leg 3 is financial health. Every year we've asked around stress levels in those areas of well-being, and every single year we see that folks are even more stressed out in all of those key areas of well-being. But again, they are not in silos. And my favorite part of this slide is the 2 bubbles up at the top. We see here and confirm that that financial stress that people are feeling is spilling over into other areas. So 79% said that my mental health is affected by my financial health. And 73% said my physical health is affected by my financial health. So again, we can't think about stress or issues within financial life as a silo and self-contained, because we see here confirm that it's spilling over and having a negative impact on other areas of well-being. And like we saw on the previous slide, a negative effect on work as well. So if we see some of this negative stress coming related to financial life, we wanted to really figure out, well, what does that mean? What is that showing up as? And here we're showing some of the top areas of financial concern this year and also last year, so we can see some trends. So number 1, I mentioned the ability to achieve financial independence is the number 1 concern for respondents. You'll see that all the way at the right of the slide, and you'll see that actually increased 5% since last year. And then we see other key areas of financial concern too. So the ability to pay off student loans, saving for education expenses, saving for health expenses. We also see debt as well, so paying off other debt, and that is a concern that has increased 7% since last year. If anybody saw our research study last year, we did a deep dive into debt, and again, we're seeing that concern is not going away. It wasn't a flash in the pan. We're seeing tons of credit card debt increases. The Harris poll shared with us anecdotally, and based on some other research that they do, credit card debt just continues to be something that bubbles up as a concern across other research studies as well, as is even holiday debt. So they shared with us that they had a stat that folks have not yet paid off their holiday expenses, which it's May, and you might think that's not that big of a deal, but actually they were talking about last year's holiday debt. So the 2021 holiday season, many people have not paid off that debt. So debt continues to be something that is a huge roadblock in preventing many employees from reaching an improvement within financial health. And then we're seeing a lot of this stress is starting to really jeopardize feelings of security in some key areas. So 64% say my financial independence is in jeopardy. 61% are saying my plans for retirement are in jeopardy. And about half of respondents said that my feelings of job stability are actually in jeopardy as well. Interestingly, in those first two stats, we see an increased response from both women and millennials. And that last stat around job security, we also see an increased response from millennials. Millennials actually make up and have for quite a while the largest portion of the US workforce. So definitely noteworthy when we see an increase from millennials. And I mentioned that three-legged stool around well-being. So we've asked some questions around feelings of importance around those three key areas: financial, physical, and mental. Every single year we see an increase in sort of an equal feeling of importance across all three areas. And we've also asked, which of those three areas do you feel the least in control over? And every single year in our research, we see that people feel less and less in control of their financial health, to the point where now there's an 8% gap in the feeling of importance that people feel over their financial health and their ability to feel control over their financial health. So importance over financial well-being is increasing, while the sense of control over financial well-being is decreasing. And here's where we start to see that this stress and all these feelings around the need to address financial well-being are starting to alter plans. So we see that 73% say soaring living expenses have changed the way that I'm thinking about retirement. 73% also say inflation is directly responsible for threats to their plans in retirement. And then 63% say this current economic environment has totally affected my plans to retire early. So we're starting to see this picture shift from just feeling to what folks are actually doing today. And, you know, I think one of the key takeaways and action steps that employers can think about here is, you know, clearly employees are stressed out. We're seeing that in a lot of different ways. So it's a phenomenal time to check in. And it's not really even in this case about adding to or changing, but perhaps there's tons of tools and resources that have been long available to them on the shelf that they have not been motivated to take action on. And maybe at this point, there's definitely more of an appetite for them to do, you know, a financial checklist or kind of attack other types of tools and resources. So a beautiful time to kind of re-educate employees on what's available.
Question and comment. As far as the group, the 1,000 workers, any salary range data on those 1,000? And then the other kind of comment was, you know, inflation can be harder for a lower income worker. So I guess, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And since this is really meant to be kind of like a snapshot and average, we have many different salary ranges, many different industries represented, many different age groups. There's a call out later on to a group that we saw an emphasis in the lower income. So I think that's to come, but we have a lot of that data that we can always do a deep dive into. So if anybody wants to kind of dissect a bit for a specific group, whether that be income, industry, or age, we'd be very happy to kind of dig into it, because it's a great point. There's going to be certain impacts that people are feeling across the board, but some groups may be feeling that more.
Right, perfect. Okay, good to know. I'll let you back to you.
Great. So section 1, again, all about how participants are feeling. And now we're going to take a look at what they're actually doing. So they're feeling the impact of the current economic climate. and that's making them really react accordingly to their plans later on. And the big highlight here is that folks are delaying retirement. We asked this question very specifically. So we said, before this current economic climate, when were you planning to retire? And they said 62. And we said, now, due to today's economic climate, when are you planning to retire? And the response has been 65. So folks are delaying retirement by 3 years. This slide always gets a lot of great feedback and questions, and sort of a lot of folks opining on it. You know, there's a lot of regulation changes, laws, a lot of other impacts here that are shifting this. But I think just as a kind of keynote highlight, interesting that folks are pushing that timeline back. Also, just at the bottom of the screen, you'll see an interesting breadcrumb at the bottom here. So 69% say, if my employer provided post-retirement benefits, I'd actually consider retiring early. So I think something for us to consider as we talk about evaluating benefit offerings, and sort of consider some of the new tools and resources that are even more readily available through things like Secure 2.0, perhaps something for employers to consider. We are seeing, you know, here that people are stressed out, but they're taking a more active role, which I think is great news here. 71% say this environment's actually motivating me to get more involved in my finances. I think this was surprising in all the best ways, because you wouldn't really blame people for being so stressed out and sort of wanting to hide away and waiting for the storm to pass. But instead, they're actually leaning in and they want to take more action, which is, again, to my comment earlier about perhaps there's tools and resources that are already available to them, but they just have not been motivated to take advantage of them. But today they are motivated. And then interestingly here, we see 77% say, I actually think my employer should be providing me incentives for good financial behaviors. So they want to be held accountable. And particularly, you'll see at the bottom there, millennials, 83% of millennials actually feel that way. They think that their employer should provide some incentives for good financial behaviors. So if people are getting more involved and motivated to take an action role in their financial life, what are they doing? So we wanted to dive into some of the actions they're taking. This slide is outlining some of their day-to-day financial behaviors that folks are taking. So unsurprisingly, we see that they're cutting expenses. We also see that they're looking for a side hustle, which is super interesting. I know that we live in a gig economy, but if I was an employer and I knew that my employees were looking for a side job, I would definitely raise an eyebrow. We also see that people are delaying a big purchase. They're re-examining financial providers, and they're also looking to open a new credit card, take a new loan. So I think some good behaviors here, also some that are concerning. And that same is true with not only day-to-day financial life, but on this side, we're looking at retirement-specific financial behaviors. So number one, we see that people are still contributing to their retirement accounts, which is great. We also saw that we just talked about how they're delaying retirement. We see that they're also re-examining retirement-related providers. They're looking to move money to cash, retirement money to cash. So we've kind of shifted from some good behaviors to some concerning behaviors, or they're looking to borrow against their retirement plan. So people are motivated to take action, and now it's really a matter of how can we incentivize people to take the right actions that are going to benefit them. We see that folks are really examining some of their plans as well. So 58% say, this current economic environment, because of that, I think I'm actually going to plan on working during retirement, which you see is emphasized for the baby boomer generation, so 68%. And that's actually increased 6% since we started our research. So more and more people are thinking actually working in retirement might make sense. Towards the right of the slide, upper right, we see, again, we talked about people still contributing to their retirement savings. We see 60% actually increased their retirement contributions, which is great. But this purple box over to the right is super concerning. We see that 40% say that I decreased my retirement savings due to the current economic environment. And this is that lower income group that I mentioned earlier. So we see that this is emphasized for two key groups, lower income respondents and also women. So I think something definitely of note here for us to consider. But my absolute favorite part of this slide is the bottom left. So 65% are saying, I need a plan. I would rather a more concrete plan for how I spend my later years. This stat is actually increased 13% since we started our research, and is also significantly increased for the baby boomer generation. So thinking about those people getting closer to retirement, they're saying, actually, shoot, I really need a more concrete plan. But even in all age groups, we're seeing more and more people say, I really, really need a plan. I need a concrete plan for my later years, which just screams out this need for advice and guidance. So workers are definitely feeling the impact of the current economic climate. We're seeing them change plans, et cetera. And what they really, really need is more direction and advice. So we saw some good behaviors people are taking. We saw some concerning behaviors like moving retirement money to cash or borrowing against their retirement plans, et cetera, looking to take out loans in their personal life or opening a new credit card. So resources that we can align to really incentivize the right behaviors versus letting people sort of sort this out on their own.
Yeah, just another comment too, and question actually. So we see a lot of, new participants, right? New hired. These are the groups that are changing jobs within the volatile environment. But I'd be curious what data you have behind retention and getting the behaviors to change with their current workforce instead of just getting people new to come to work. So any thoughts on that?
You mean sort of providing new tools and resources and really thinking about the retention of their current workforce and staying employed?
Right.
Yeah, I think some of the slides we were talking about earlier around the Great Resignation. So the message last year was all about you should totally think about what you're offering employees because they're going to leave. They're totally going to leave if you don't. They're going to find something better. The grass is greener type of approach. So now that we see that that's no longer and people are actually staying, that doesn't mean that employees are like, well, I don't need anything. Just I'm happy to be here sort of thing. I think people are like, okay, no, I either made a mistake and I'm coming back or I'm staying put in this environment. And, one of the call outs that we saw a couple slides ago is that many people, particularly younger employers, they're staying put, but they're looking to their employer and they're saying, what should I do? I need some help. I need some incentives. I need some guidance and advice. So I think that's another anecdote that we've long thrown out in the industry to say employees actually are looking to employers. And there's always been a debate of like, nope. They're looking elsewhere. They're not looking for that advice from employers, but we're seeing that they are. And I think that is a really nice story for retention and trust, and that folks are really seeing that the workplace is an epicenter for them financially. They're not, they're more comfortable going to their employer for sort of the full spectrum of financial needs. And that's, I think, a really nice retention story for sure.
Yeah, and what we see too is, hey, I'm willing to work longer, but show me why I should do it. Show me the money, right? So
Exactly.
anyway, yeah, I'll be curious to see more on how that kind of comes about as the boomers stay in the workforce and then, millennials grow up. So, all right, back to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for the great comments. All right, so we spent many slides talking about how participants feel today, a lot of stress. We talked a bunch about what they're doing. So some of the behaviors they're taking a more active role, they're leaning in, they're doing some good things, they're doing some bad things. So now in part 3, hopefully bringing that all together and really highlighting some key areas of consideration for employers when thinking about the tools, benefits, resources that maybe they want to add, highlight, or really evolve when thinking about kind of total benefit offerings. So American workers are turning to employers for more personalized support and improving well-being across all dimensions. And the name of the game here is holistic. So 70% of respondents say, when it comes to benefits, I would like more holistic options to address current economic climates. That's increased for millennials. We also wanted to work with the Harris poll to really define what holistic means. And for the purposes of our research, we're defining it as the ability to assess all of my financial goals together. So a colleague of ours put this really well, really thinking about employees and participants, not just as future retirees, but folks with a myriad of financial concerns and priorities across the spectrum. How do we address all of those together? And, you know, in terms of our respondents, it really matters to them that their employers are addressing sort of turbulent times. We see that it matters how much effort they're going to put into their job, how they feel about working there, how likely they are to refer someone else. Speaking about that retention topic, how long they're going to stay at their current job, and increased across the board for the younger generations. So the ability for an employer to actually address financial concerns is helping people feel good about staying at their job. My favorite part of this slide, though, is at the bottom. So 68% of respondents say, I feel taken care of when I see my employer addressing the current economic climate. And 59% say, I count on my employer to help me navigate turbulent times. That is increased for millennials. So 69% of the largest portion of the workforce is saying, I count on my employer to help me navigate turbulent times. So again, I think a debate or an anecdote, hopefully this is providing some sort of data set behind the fact that yes, employees are looking to employers for support as it relates to their financial life. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a bit forward just to kind of get to the crux of some of these tools and resources. So yes, employees are looking to employers for resources. What does that look like? And number one on that list is the ability to speak to a financial advisor or a financial coach. So employees are looking for access to advice and guidance. That is their number one ask. They're also looking for some more automation. So they're interested in things like auto enrollment. They want to be able to easily adjust sort of their plans, particularly in specific times like this, economic uncertainty. But they're also looking for other things like tax guidance, budgeting, how do they manage debt, etc. So a lot of, again, full spectrum things, not just retirement related. Just going back to that number one topic around advice, we've asked every single year, what is the interest that people have in access to advice and guidance? We've asked, do you have tools and resources like that and are using it? Or do you not have them but would use it? And the summary here is what you see in kind of those bold numbers. So 58% say they would be interested in access to a financial professional. 64% say they have interest in financial planning tools. And 53% say they have interest in financial education. So again, we're not seeing the word retirement on here. We're seeing a lot of other topics here that kind of come in tandem with planning for retirement. But again, the full spectrum of financial needs. We're also seeing that personalization. There's definitely an appetite there. So when we started, we talked a lot about financial independence and some of these really more individualized goals that people have and the importance around those increasing. The way to get there is through more personalized solutions. So we wanted to kind of gut check how people are feeling about those. 78% say I would be interested in more personalized 401k investment options. 77% say more personalized 401k investment options would actually encourage me to participate or contribute more, even more for millennials. And 75% say if my employer offered a more customized managed account solution as a 401k option, I'd be more likely to stay in the plan if I retired or changed employers. So an interesting workforce management and plan management concept. Again, more increased with millennials. We did a deep dive, as you'll see at the bottom of the slide, kind of a summary on the trade-off there. Personalized solutions totally make sense. We see it in all other areas of our life. This is one area that we haven't really cracked that nut, but we need more information. And the summary there is that people are comfortable providing more information to their employer in exchange for more personalized tools and resources. Just closing it out with one or two more slides. This is one of my favorite slides. We've asked every single year around what types of benefits folks would be interested in if their employer either increased an existing benefit or added. you'll see that increase to pay or increase to 401k match are always at the top. And of course, this year, again, given all the stress we talked about earlier on, people are very, very interested in an increase to pay. But the rest of this list is always a phenomenal, I think, checklist for any employer to really sit down with a retirement plan professional and really consider, do any of these other types of benefits really make sense for my total benefit offering? So things like putting money into an investment that would guarantee a portion of retirement income, access to an emergency savings, access to a health savings account, contribution towards student loan payments, the ability to help save for my children's education. So you'll see a lot of things kind of called out here that match up very nicely with so many more tools and resources that are now more available to employers given things like Secure 2.0. So again, I think a phenomenal checklist for anyone to kind of sit down and consider, what is that total benefit offering that I'm providing to employees that, yes, of course, sort of meet the need for planning for retirement, but go well beyond that to really meet the full financial picture. Because again, sort of bringing it back to where we started, financial independence is the main goal. And really thinking about that through that holistic lens of, or how are we providing those tools and resources so that people can assess all of their financial needs together so that they're more likely to reach what is their main goal, financial independence. Again, I think so many great sort of breadcrumbs to see good behaviors people are taking, concerning ones. Those resources really highlight sort of the huge call to action. I think the biggest summary there for me is the word holistic and access to advice and guidance. And again, so many more tools and resources that are either more available today or will be more available soon, given some recent regulation as well.
Thank you. And just lastly, I was curious, what's the most surprising of this data? And also, if this was done in 2018, 2019, when the market was great before we had a pandemic, what would be the big highlights there?
I think the most surprising one for me is definitely that people are leaning in and taking more active role. I would have thought, and again, wouldn't have been surprised or really blamed anyone if they kind of wanted to say like, this environment is icky, I'm going to wait this out. But so the motivation that people have to really lean in and take a more active role in their finance is phenomenal. And I think any way that we can help support them in doing that. It's an interesting question about 18 or 19. We think about sort of the Great Resignation stuff we talked about last year, or some of the things that people would have been asking for. I hope that they would have been asking for a lot of the non-retirement things that we looked at in this last section. But again, I think when the waters calm and people are always like, oh, I'll do that checklist some other time, or I'll put off that sort of assessment, etc. So I hope that they would have been asking for and thinking about sort of full spectrum of improving financial well-being. But I have to imagine there probably would have been a bit of inertia across the board in the results.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to look back, but yeah, the inertia is good, right? The fire's good. So, well, thank you so much. In the interest of time, we'll wrap up here in the next minute. Really appreciate you, Jackie, for joining us. This will be recorded. Franklin Templeton also offers a variety of surveys and templates to help ignite and, like we said, light that fire for your workforce. And I know business owners look to 401k plan professionals for content and guidance as well. So we'll be talking more and more about surveying your workforce in the next couple quarters as well. But as a reminder, we do webinars monthly, and the next one coming up is actually May 18, the fiduciary quarterly training with Jenna Witherby. Great for any new hires, great for HR controllers. And then June 8th, we have a new topic, audit best practices. So for our clients with that hover around that 100, 120 participants, this will be a great one to tune into. thank you again for attending. Jackie, thank you to you. We really, really appreciate it. Please reach out with any questions, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon.